So yeah.
And hello, my friends, to our September evening of Sanctuary Online and our Sanctuary Book Club. So, as you know, my role for Sanctuary Book Club is this big because I say hello, I hit the record button, I make sure his hair looks good, okay, beforehand. And then I turn it over to my gorgeous and incredibly well-prepared wife. And Cheryl, as usual, they are all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was going to be my first question because Joby alluded to that. I guess Kelly and Chrissy, I said, you guys both listened to it, right? So if you listen to it on Audible, Kelly shared this with me, that they have an interview with
They do, yeah.
At the end. Yeah. It's a very cool interview too. I couldn't figure out how to get it off of Kelly's Audible, so I had Joby download it. And I listened to it last night so that
an interview with the author. Sorry,
yes.
I missed. Oh, okay.
Yeah, an interview with the author. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. You guys, one of you guys, Christy or Kelly, want to share what you learned from that? Because that was kind of interesting. I think people would like to know what was said in that interview. What do you remember about it?
I already totally forgot.
I remember she started writing late in life.
Yeah.
I mean, she wrote a lot. She wrote always, but in terms of publishing, isn't she over 50?
I don't know. This book was published. She was in her 40s when she started doing it, right? That's what I got. I don't know.
But it wasn't, yeah, her, like she wrote for her career, public relations, communications kind of stuff. But then writing and publishing a novel, she did that later. You know,
Yeah.
She didn't start that in her 20s.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of interesting because this was her first novel, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and she isn't a chemist. She had to learn all the chemistry stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to say, this isn't really her first novel. There was a novel beforehand, but
really?
a lot of the publishers just totally rejected it, like about 99 publishers. And then she started writing this, and I'm glad it was successful.
Yeah.
And did you see in that interview, it said it's completely opposite what happened with the first one then, Rose, because with this book, she had bids from publishers.
Yeah.
And so she had to pick which publisher she wanted to publish her.
Yeah, and her agent helped
incredible?
her. Yeah, her agent helped her because she got all these offers because people loved it.
Isn't that incredible? I've never heard that happening before with a writer. You know, that's pretty amazing.
That's her dog's name is 99, right?
Yeah, her dog's name is 99. Yeah. And I think she's a cook. I think that part she didn't have to research, right? Do I remember correctly?
Right. I think that's correct.
I don't remember that, but okay, good. Cool. Well, what were your impressions of this book, just in general?
Oh, I thought it flowed very easily. It was fun to read. Start with that. It was really fun. You know, after The Choice and some of those other books, it's fun to just sit down one day and laugh and read a book.
Yeah, that was nice.
Character development was very well done.
Yeah.
In a way, for me, it was kind of a blast from the past because I was born in the 50s and was a kid in the 60s, and I could relate to a lot of what was going on back then, even as a kid, because women didn't have many rights. In some ways, this book was hilarious, but in other ways too, kind of sad in some regards, because some of the same things are going on, like in academia and things of that nature.
Yeah, I bet.
Well,
almost all of
in
us
academia
right here were born then, right? Aren't all of us born in that
1954,
62,
43.
Yeah. So,
but
what were you about to say?
That in academia today, in fact, I've got the data from my college. I teach at UT Austin, and women get promoted on average 18 months later than men.
Oh, I believe that.
Oh,
if at all.
You know, one thing I read just
So, I
reading
mean,
it
it still happens.
yeah.
is that one part where they steal her work, that actually happened to her. There was some man at the agency that she was at, and he stole her work and he got the credit for it.
Wow.
Oh,
I
when she
can't
was a
imagine.
copywriter? You mean at her job? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, the job, either the PR or Tom, but yeah, the guy took all the credit and it was her idea
Wow.
solely.
I had a woman boss do that to me early in my career.
Took credit for your stuff?
Hmm.
Wow.
Took my name off, put her name on, turned it in as hers.
Wow.
What
That's
department are you a professor
I,
in?
I lasted 9 months in that job, and after 6, I was looking for another.
Yeah.
What
Wow.
do you teach, Christy?
I
At U-
teach management
Yeah.
in the business school at UT.
I worked for UT my 99% of my career, not UT Austin, but I started at UT Austin, then went to System, then went to
Hmm.
Health Science Center, and then UTSA, and then Health Science Center.
Oh, okay. You've been
And I went
around.
there, graduated in '84 though.
Yeah,
Back in the days when it wasn't so hard to get in.
yeah, me too.
Oh,
Any of
went there
you,
too.
any of you see the series or remember, oh my, the series Mad Men? If-
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it,
They
but
were-
I did think, I bet you there's some parallels.
Yeah, she reminds me of the wife of the famous ad guy in Mad Men, and it took her a long time to bust out and to be herself, and to some extent she pushed and pushed to wear the lab coat and to do the chemistry, and women started taking notes and bringing their notebooks and pens to the show, and like she commanded a whole audience that was incredible,
Yeah.
as long as she could be herself, which I admired, and that she called her, and why it triggered to me was that she called her daughter Mad.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great. I just loved it. That, and I've been trying to count how many words my dog knows.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I like the way that she pushed ahead too. It's so hard. My deceased partner, Darlene, was executive editor at World Book Encyclopedia. And
Wow.
I had my own company. I had a small company, but we used to do these seminars with women sometimes, and we would talk about this. We would say, Cynthia's hiring, this was years ago, remember, Cynthia's hiring people and her top salary is $35,000 a year. Darlene's hiring people and her top salary is like 150,000. But women and men, unfortunately, there's some problems here that we have to work on. Because what would happen is the men would come in for an interview and their first question was, how soon can I be promoted?
Mm-hmm.
And the women would just sit there. And I had
Mhm.
women leave interviews without knowing what the job paid. So we have to start, we used to do a little coaching class saying, yes, it's bad out there, but women have to be coached, and we have to realize the men think nothing of demanding advancement. It's built
Right.
into their gene pool.
yeah.
And they always want the assignments that pay the most.
Well, and what happens is men are promoted based on their potential,
Exactly.
whereas women aren't promoted until they show they can do the job.
Good point.
So women tend to have to actually perform the new job in their old job before they're promoted.
Wow.
Whereas men, oh, he has the potential. He'll be able to catch on quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I was
Incredible.
trying to remember the name of that book that talked about how women are, have to walk this fine line between being, if they're too nurturing, then they aren't seen as leaders. But if they're too focused on work, they're not seen as real women, or they're
seen as
seen as
pushy.
ball busters.
They're
You
going,
know, having to walk that line. I'm trying to remember what that book was. It was the most depressing book. I think I forgot the title on
You
purpose.
blocked it out.
When I
Well, and
first
that's-
started you couldn't even, like, I wasn't allowed to work late without him keeping a man there with me. That was in UT Austin.
Wow.
Yeah, there was all kinds of rules like that. And I try to tell my daughter what I had to wear to work, and she's like, "What?
Yeah.
Pantyhose? What are pantyhose?"
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that
it-
was an interesting line in the book, Kelly, was, they wanted her to wear certain things, and here
Yes.
she was. It was like 61 or something when she was on the TV show.
Yeah.
And she was, you know, wearing pants and
Mhm.
on TV,
And a lab coat.
on her show there with a lab coat and stuff. And I just thought, wow, it brought back remembrances for me of like, when was I allowed to wear pants to school? I mean, how long, at what grade level? Do you guys remember that when it happened?
Yeah. It was only on a Friday, and I was in grade 12, so that would have
Yeah.
been 1971.
Yeah.
Wow.
At my school, well, girls could wear skirts and dresses, but I was on student council with some other of my friends, and we really worked hard, and we got it so that policy was passed that girls could wear slacks. And that was like our big achievement, which, yeah.
Kudos to you.
I never
Yeah.
remember not being able to wear pants, Cheryl. Isn't that weird?
Well, once we got to Spain, you could
Mhm.
at the
But
and
so you think in grade school I wasn't allowed to wear pants?
oh hell no.
I don't remember. I
Whoa.
don't remember
Yeah.
what I wore.
Yeah, no, you weren't. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I remember when I was in the Air Force, and when I first joined the Air Force, women weren't allowed to get pregnant. You had to get out of the Air Force when you got
Wow.
pregnant. And but while I was in the first, I think it's second year or third year that I was on active duty, women were allowed to get pregnant and stay in the Air Force. However, they didn't have any maternity uniforms or anything. So one woman that I knew of, she was standing at guarding the gate, right? Where you enter in
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you salute to people when they can.
Okay, yeah.
But she was so pregnant, she didn't fit in her uniform. So here she is wearing civilian clothes, right? And
Oh.
saluting to my full bird colonel. That's a pretty high rank if you're not familiar with it. Who came into, was saluted to by her
Amazing.
to our office where I was the only female officer in there, and the other woman that was there was a female enlisted people, and he called us in and he said, I can't believe it. They let her do that, blah, 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 blah. If either one of you ever come in here and tell me you're pregnant, you better have your marching orders. And I'm like, whoa.
Oh.
I mean, it was pretty
Wow.
bizarre. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff that went on, right? All over.
Well, my mother was a brilliant person. Well, she got her majors were both math and English. And she
Wow.
got out of college and went and taught for 5 years, and everybody loved her. And when she went in and said, I'm marrying, this is 1940, I'm getting married the end of June, and the principal said, well, of course, then you'll have your resignation on my desk.
Mhm.
No married woman can teach.
Wow.
Yep. My
Not even-
grandmother had to hide her engagement ring on a chain
Sure.
around her neck, or she would have gotten kicked out of nursing school.
Mhm. So
So they really did break the glass for us, didn't they?
Mhm.
yes, they did.
And
Yeah.
I tell my daughter I broke it for her too. I put up with all that malarkey.
Yeah.
I remember the name of that book, The Likability Trap.
Yes, I saw it in the chat. That's cool.
The likability trap.
It'll make you really angry though. But
Yeah.
it's important. It's important research. It's because it's true. And it
Mhm.
really helped me understand how it's impossible. It's a really, the whole culture set up to make it impossible to dial in the right amount of nurturing versus leadership.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. And how much do you be one of the boys?
Mm-hmm.
And how much do you stand in your own self when you're in a
Mhm.
male dominated field like that, right? So that's part of that as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
it is.
can, we were told not to wear anything, maybe a little bit of mascara, and wear a suit that looks as much like a man's suit as you can.
Well,
So, and that was in 84.
Mhm.
Well, and Cheryl, look at, our daughter Rachel is a firefighter in Indianapolis, and they
Wow,
have to
it's
wear
like, yeah.
a men's uniform with nasty ties. The shirts don't fit. They just look like hell. And then put a stupid hat on. And it's just like in all these years, what she's in her young 30s, and they still, it's very sad. They want to be so proud, of what they've done. And I've never probably seen a worse looking uniform for a female.
yeah, they don't concentrate on it at all because there's only 3% women in firefighting. 3%, so
It's what Rachel can break the ground.
yep.
Go to a seamstress and have them create her a uniform.
Well, I'm thinking about that Queen Latifah movie with Dolly Parton in it. And they're in a choir, and Dolly Parton does her choir robe so she has a figure instead of just being straight up and down. Go for it.
That's funny. Well, what did you learn in this book? What's something you learned?
The chemistry of cooking.
Mhm.
To think of it as chemistry, and it became very obvious, wasn't it? It was like, oh, well, of course,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've researched the chemistry of cookies before, but I always forget.
Yeah, that's significant.
I'm not a particularly good cook. I'm a recipes only cook. And I actually refer to myself as being a food chemist because I'm afraid if I stray from the recipe by one little bit that the
Yes.
kitchen will explode.
It will.
Yep.
And I'm the opposite end of that. I make it the way the recipe says one time, and then I have to adjust.
Yeah. What about, for me, was partially about rowing, because
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not familiar with rowing. And then she said they have to do the erg, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And
they never explained it either.
you know what it is?
What?
It's a rowing
It's
machine.
a rowing machine.
Yeah,
Oh.
you just, it's a rowing machine. I mean, Joe and I have one in each of our houses, and we use them all the time, so I thought that was really funny. I had no idea that that's what that was, the erg. She still said it in her interview. She said, she was describing her day, what she would do. She would write, she'd do this, and then in the afternoon she'd go to the gym and erg. And I'm like, what? She rows.
Well, and I did that. I had a leadership development activity thingy where we went and learned how to row an 8-person scull.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was hard.
Mhm.
And so I really related to that part of the book where she's learning how and they're tipping over the boat. We didn't tip over our boat, but it's way harder than it looks.
Oh, I would bet. Just trying to do, everybody has to be even and everybody has to do it the same way. And,
Yep.
and
you really can. I mean, they talked about some of the stuff they warned us about, if you let go of your paddle, it'll smack you. the handle will smack you in the head or smack the person in front of you in the back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did dragon boat racing, but my dad was big into sculling.
Really?
It was the Argonaut Rowing Club along the lake shore, which I used to run every day along the lake. But I did dragon boat, but I think sculling by the looks of it is really hard and such a discipline. Everything she was in was so disciplined,
Yes.
Yes.
and even the way she taught, I admired it. I guess the thing I learned, I mean, I knew it, but the amount of sexual violation, I turned down page 178 where she and Frank had the confrontation, and it said Elizabeth hardened, and without meaning to reveal a fact about herself that she'd never told anyone other than a police officer, she tells the colleague that she was sexually violated by my thesis advisor and then kicked out of the doctoral program. You and Frank looked back and said same. So
No,
and I mean,
that was the HR lady, right?
the HR lady, yeah, but
The
she went by
HR
the name of
lady
Frank.
said, yeah.
She went by a male name, like.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That was her last name, was Frank.
Yeah, Frank. Yep. And but the amount of that that went on even then and not talked about, still not talked about. I think that was a big learning for me. Like, holy smokes, things haven't changed that much.
Yeah, I was kind of listening to some news that was on this morning, and I don't even know what it was or anything, but they said something about, well, women, there has to be a longer statute of limitations because women don't report stuff like that. They don't go, hey, this happened to me, and run off because, you're not going to be believed, they're going to blame you for it. Who knows what's going to happen. It's embarrassing. It's, I mean, all that kind of stuff, right? So,
well, our own University of Michigan had a president who was removed because he was a predator.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
And had been for years. I wasn't there. He was the dean of the School of Public Health. I had left before he started, so I never met the man. But supposedly he, went through the School of Public Health and the grad students there, and then continued his shenanigans in the president's office.
Wow.
And had a 20-year career at Michigan before he was finally outed by a man who was pissed off. He was outed by a man who was pissed off because one of the girlfriends got a promotion that the man thought he deserved.
Sure.
And that's what led to the investigation of that guy.
Wow.
They were the guy that was the gymnastics coach too.
Oh yeah, that's Michigan State. Yeah, Michigan
Oh,
State.
it's a different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, now
I
their
wondered that
football
when
coach too. Their football coach was having phone sex with somebody. It's like, oh, gross.
What is that?
I'm a graduate. I'm a grad of Michigan State University, and it really is very embarrassing what's
Oh
been-
yeah. It must, I mean, it's horrible that they tolerated this. And the same thing, Notre Dame, the football coach tolerated a predator.
Yeah.
University of Pennsylvania, remember that guy? He
Yeah.
had a predator in the locker room.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
of.
he was a coach.
That's what I'm thinking of. That was, it
Yeah,
was,
that was
where
really
it was.
bad.
Not Notre Dame. Yeah. Sorry, Notre Dame.
He was bringing young fellas in every weekend
Yep.
to shower with him and stuff. It was awful.
And people knew.
Yeah, they did know.
So I had a very different thought about this book. It reminded me what a lot of y'all have gone through, because she couldn't be what she wasn't. So she had to be a professional and work and be a chemist. She had to be, she couldn't be something else. And it reminded me of like Cheryl, I know for sure, has explained to me, you couldn't be something else if you're gay. Then what do you do, And so she had that same kind of battle because she was living in a world where it was unacceptable for her to be who she was. It just struck me as the same battle for some reason.
Oh, that's interesting, Kelly. I never thought of that.
If I would have lived in those times, I wouldn't have had a problem. I wanted to be a mom and that's all, but then I didn't.
Well, and I think the book talks about that, right, Kelly? About how many women fit in
Mhm.
did what was expected, but were unsatisfied with their lives.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
And
think
maybe
that
didn't
was-
even realize why.
Yeah, yeah. I think that they were, in the 60s when people really started figuring it out. I've read some stories about women in that time, and
Mhm.
that's what they said. They didn't know what they wanted. Like they just knew this wasn't enough.
Yeah. Well, and that's what she appealed to. And that
Yes, I was just
was
gonna say
what
that's how she grew her audience.
yeah,
People
grew
loved
her
it.
audience, right?
Mhm.
And that was just so interesting to me that
Mhm.
he
Mhm.
really appealed to them and really encouraged them. And it almost was against her disciplined, you know, nature, that she's like being very nurturing to them and saying, you can do this. Come on, you got
Mhm.
this. And I mean, I thought, wow, that was pretty powerful, so
Mhm.
that thing, that was what endeared me to her, was her ability to do that, to inspire and to bring people over,
Mhm.
like that.
Almost in an innocent way, right? 'Cause she-
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
I loved, and it was great that she would say, okay, kids, go set the table. Your mother needs a moment.
I love
Like
that.
the mother
Yeah.
couldn't say it, but she could
Yeah.
say it on the TV screen and
Right.
everybody would breathe, right? Yeah, I loved it. I loved that
What
part.
characters besides her did you like in the book, or not like in particular?
I liked what little we saw of her husband,
You liked what?
what little we saw of her husband, the father of the child.
Yeah,
I liked what I saw of him.
yeah. He was pretty awesome, wasn't he?
Wasn't he?
Yeah.
It's tragic that they were really just starting to have the caliber of relationship that she
Mm-hmm.
never thought she could have, but dreamed about,
Right.
and that he was sort of snuffed out of there.
You,
I just go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, there's a part in there that I can really relate to, and that was after Calvin died. The woman wasn't able to get his papers and things, they because they weren't married. And, being gay and everything, I mean, before there was marriage, you had to make sure that you had what are those papers?
Power of
Power of
attorney.
attorney. Yes, yes. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to visit your loved one, in the hospital and for other
Mhm.
things like that. Yeah, that's very sad.
Mhm.
Her boss Walter was such a weasel. I just couldn't stand him. And he said, these are just normal housewives you'll be talking to. And he said, just your average Janes. Elizabeth had looked back in a way that scared him. Like she could pummel him to the ground in a split second. And it was right after that she said, I've come to, I know I have the solution to my wardrobe problem. I'm wearing a lab coat. And he just didn't know what he said. No, but you did it anyway. But he was such a weasel.
But he grew. He grew.
Yeah.
Yeah, he grew.
And,
But if he wouldn't
the
have been a
character,
weasel,
the character I hated the most was the teacher, Mad's teacher.
Oh yeah.
And it
Oh.
always really, really gets to me when other women demean and take down women. So the HR lady, although she redeemed herself kind of, and
Yes.
and the teacher were the ones that really, really bugged me.
Mhm.
The teacher
More
needed
so than the men, and maybe that's unfair, but
What about Madeline, Harriet?
I
Loved
love
her.
Madeline.
Yeah, she was
Mhm.
great.
Well, and Elizabeth was smart enough to learn from her daughter, to listen to her
Yes.
daughter and treat her like a human being, not a kid.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
And I love. Oh, I was gonna say I love the dog in it.
the
6:30.
dog was awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah.
It was kind of
went
interesting
everywhere.
the way that dog talked through part of the, that was
Yeah, it was
narrated,
Yes.
narrating
Yeah.
part of it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had an
Yeah.
interesting way of doing her book. So what do you think? What is it about this book that makes it so popular? Because it is so popular. I mean, I know a lot of you guys had to go buy the book because you couldn't get it out of the library. It's like the wait is. 10 weeks long and stuff. you know?
Everybody I've talked to has loved it.
Yeah.
And people have read it that I've never talked to about books before. And I mention it and they're like, oh yeah, I read that one. It was awesome. Like,
And it hasn't been out that long. Wasn't it written in 2022 or published in 2022 or something? Or
Just looking, because I ended up finding there were 19 people waiting to read it
Wow.
in the library, and published in Canada by Doubleday, copyright 2022. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if it was dormant for a little bit and then exploded as people started, as people just really started reading it. And it was nowhere what the type, I mean, it is lessons in chemistry, but people didn't respond to it, because I didn't respond to it at the beginning because I thought, oh, I don't want to read about chemistry. Nah.
Yeah.
But it was, well, like when you guys went up to Sobel and saw the group of people reading it, there was a book club in the Magic Pebble, our little bookstore in the town. They were all reading it, and I got the last copy before the guy had to order more. And I said, seriously, I've only got 2 weeks to read it. I need to have the book as soon as possible. And but
What?
now I have a waiting list of people wanting to read my copy, and I've got pages
Oh.
turned down. And
Now, when is the television series starting?
October
Yeah.
13th on
When is
Apple.
it?
October 13th on Apple
Really?
TV.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's a series of 6. Yeah.
Oh, it's
And
a
the
series.
woman, the trailer, the person who's portraying Elizabeth in the trailer is how I imagine her from reading her.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Usually you're so disappointed, you know?
yeah.
What does she look like? What's
Tall and slender?
Yeah, slim, lean, tall,
Good, good.
kind of a blonde, like very 60s hair back parted. Yeah.
I
with
found the
an
trailer. You want me to share it?
Yeah. You want to see
could
it?
I?
You
Yeah,
guys
that'd
want
be
to see
great.
the trailer?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. That'd be
Way
awesome.
to go.
Let's begin, shall we?
Let's begin, shall we?
In life, discoveries usually lead to more questions. The only constant variable is the unexpected. We can't control it. It's only when you look backwards that you see how it was all connected. Let's begin, shall we?
That's perfect.
I like to cook. It's just chemistry.
You're on the verge of a major scientific breakthrough.
This institution has a reputation based on the world-class scientists, not the theories of a pretty lab tech. We have rules.
You're firing me. Stop your crying. It's a sign of the times.
I would like to offer you a job as the host of our cooking show.
Are you concussed?
No, you are poised to become a TV star. We're live in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome, viewers. This is the birthday. I need a catchphrase. Don't overthink it. Never understood what that meant. I stand proudly with the overlooked workhorse of the kitchen, women, and baked potatoes.
What the?
Almost no one has. A platform. What you say matters.
Politics don't belong in the kitchen. A man wants his wife to make him a drink after a long day at work.
Why do you assume that his day was longer than hers? Why don't you make the drink?
Yeah, Brie Larson
Because
is
we're
the
in this world, not because you are pretty, not because you are smart, but because you love me and I love you.
Your ability to change everything starts here.
I think it's
Children
gonna be
at the
really.
table. Your mother needs a moment to herself.
I love that line.
Oh,
Okay.
I think it's gonna be good. Brie
Absolutely.
Larson is really gonna be good. See the weasel of a boss, that guy, ugh,
It
Mhm.
starts October what? Is it cut out?
13.
13?
Yeah, it did
So-
cut off. Sorry about that. I was trying to mess with it and it wasn't working.
So again, what is it that makes this book so popular?
You know, with the younger kids, they had no idea how it was, you know. I don't know if that, like Mad Men fascinated Samantha, my daughter, because she couldn't conceive of that time of in life, you know.
Hmm.
I
Well,
was
you know,
wondering
there's
how
something
the-
almost Shakespearean about it, isn't there? You know, almost a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah. I was
Mhm.
gonna say, it for a lot of people, I think this is like a female empowerment type book. And there's history, there's social issues in it, and also too that humor in there. I don't think this book would have been very good if it didn't have any humor in it.
Mm.
Yeah. Her life was too hard without it.
Mhm.
It's too sad.
And it has a relatively happy ending, right? And you know,
Mhm.
positive things at the end, so it's a lighter read. It's not, you know, with what's going on in our world today, this is very nice to read. You know, you don't have to get all, you know, other than obviously the stuff that we all know about. But yeah, I mean,
You know, there was one thing I didn't really like in this book, and I liked the character of Waverly, Calvin's friend, but the man, the minister, was dealing with the little kid. I mean, you don't do that. You don't. You're not supposed to have grown men just talk with, you know, a kid like that. So, I mean, for me, I thought that was kind of a flaw in the book. I don't know if other people felt the same
Kind
way.
of forgot
Well, I
about
do
that,
think we're more
actually.
sensitized to that now than back then.
Mhm.
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 I tell me what you're talking about again. I'm not following you.
Well, Wakerly was Calvin's ex pen pal, and
Right, yeah.
Wakerly is a, you know, minister, and he started talking with Mad and the librarian at the public library. And then Mad is talking about, you know, trying to find where her father had been. And so Wakerly was trying to
Oh,
figure out what orphanage it was. And
right,
but yeah, they were interacting without the mom knowing that. And
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. We're a lot more sensitive to that than they
Mhm.
might have been back then, right?
Mhm.
But did you feel like they were keeping it from the mother, or was it that she wasn't
no, I don't think so. And I mean the interactions were, you know, positive and nothing nefarious. But I just thought, you know, gee, you know, that isn't very realistic, I
yeah,
guess.
not today's world.
Yeah.
But I did think that there was something missing from Mad's life, and he was supplying it because she was so busy, you know.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I notice about this book is that it's well, some people have called it anti-God and anti-Catholic.
Oh, wow.
And you know, part of the anti-Catholic thing was the boys' home where Calvin grew up. That bishop, you know, really had no place in being the head of that place, but he was just you know, scrupulous, you know, saying that Calvin had died and everything, and he's looking for more money and this and that, and he wants to get out of there and everything. Anyway, I had read a few reviews from a religious, you know, people, and they noted that.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, they certainly didn't put religion or anything about that Catholicism or about the Catholic schools in a good light, right? But you know, that was, you know, part of the way it was written. I think her whole point was to say that so many of those things have actually created a lot of the
Mhm.
issues that she had to deal with about men being over women and so on and so forth, right? Um, yeah. But yeah, that's interesting that people would say that. Yeah. Huh, I
I'd
wonder what
forgotten about that.
I wonder what her comeback would be to that, what she would say.
Mhm.
Don't know.
Well, it's kind of like during the holidays, you have Hanukkah for Jewish people, Christmas for Christians, and the other, I forget what that other begins with a K. But anyway, you have Festivus for the rest of
Kwanzaa.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kwanzaa. But for all the other people, it's Festivus for the rest of us. That's kind of, we don't really believe in this type of organized religion. But back then, I mean, it was, I don't know, to say that you don't believe in God was like sacrilegious, and you are not a good citizen or a person if you don't believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's part of the appeal, is that she was just so raw about everything.
Yes.
And was not, and I don't know whether she was really fearless or she was driven or determined, but I admired her tenacity. Like she just went for it, and was even the sort of satire, I don't know if that's the right word, even the sort of satire of her being a chemist on a cooking show, she was going to preach it, like, and she turned the thing around so that people were lining up at the door and bringing their notebooks and taking notes and studying a potato. I mean, she really, like, that was the funny part to me, was they had no idea what she was going to come out with next, and they didn't know how to handle it, but eventually they just let her do it, and it was the #1 show, right? It was the #1.
Sure.
Supper at 6 reminded me a little bit of Rachel Ray. She preceded all of that, all of the reality cooking shows and Master Chef, and that was way before that. So I think that's the appeal, though. It's like you could take that, what was going on then, and plunk it into now, and it would be relevant.
Mm-hmm. So how has this book impacted your life?
That's a good question. When I read books like this, and it was the same with The Choice, and that her career was closer to mine, but I always think, okay, am I making as much impact as I could be? Like, am I really, after all these years, what kind of contribution? I mean, she had a ton of struggles, but she plowed and pushed through it all and made for lack of a better phrase, a global impact, and changed her current place or current status, and that of her daughters. I mean, she paved the way for her daughter, who was a brain kid too. So that's always my reaction. Okay, seriously, are you working? Are you making a contribution? So hope
But
so.
it's sort of like that Christmas movie. I can't say the name of it. It was my favorite movie for years. If he hadn't been born, with James Stewart, if you look back at your life, like, you think you're not making an impact, but if you looked back at your life, what impact did you make that you were unaware of? I mean, you're not living to make the impact, but what would have life been like for other people if you hadn't been there?
Yeah, she wasn't actually trying necessarily to make an impact. She was just living her life, right? And it just showed up that way. But I just want to say, Jane Ann, I wouldn't worry too much about the impact you're having on people.
but like, it's the same context. You don't really know when you're in the moment. Like when people were lining up, and the trailer showed that, right? People are lining up, and she's becoming this overnight success on TV in her field, but not in her field. She had a hard time with it. Like she was like, and she made her kitchen into a chemistry lab. Like, that was the first.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Like, to what ends are you willing to go? to make it, right? Or to make an impact. And she was determined to bring up Madeline or Mad. I just love the name.
Jane Ann, how many cookies did you send out last year?
Yeah.
How many?
Thousands. But that's a friggin' cookie.
Jane Ann. Okay, so some of the folks on this call don't know this about you. How many shortbread Christmas cookies did you send out last year? Give me a number, because I know you know the number.
About 4,200.
Wow.
Look, yeah. Anybody ever have a memory of having a Christmas cookie? Like, and it brings up all the smells, it brings up all the memories, and it brings.
Yeah.
So this is the case, is we don't know, because just like I appreciate what you said to open this call, Kelly. When we're rewriting, creating life that matters right now and putting that on the internet, and one of the things that we had a definition that we created ourselves was that your passion is something that you can't not do.
Yes, I agree.
Right. And for each of us, I mean, that's our belief, is that somewhere in our lives, especially as we look back at our life and let our life kind of tell us what we've stood for, it's that, I mean, Christy is obviously incredibly successful at the university, and it's something that she can't not do. It's like when you meet her, she's a teacher. Everything about that, Christy, right, is it's part of our DNA, and it comes out. And I imagine for each person on the call, if we looked at it, and it's probably not something we do in order to leave that stamp, but if we do what we do with full presence in the moment every time we do it, we're leaving that stamp, on somebody. And most times, like, we never know, right? We never know, but they do. The person whose stamp we left upon them, who we left our stamp upon, they know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what is that Maya Angelou quote about, if you cast your bread upon the water?
Yeah. You never know downstream who's going to receive the gift, right, of you casting your time, your love, your laughter, your smiles, whatever you do, but you cast your gift upon the water, and you know that you'll never see the person that affects. But what you do know is someone cast their bread upstream, and you were the recipient of that. Right. And so that God, there was a time when I was just at my wit's end at the church, because with volunteers, you could pour everything into them and they just walk, like you just never see them again. Right. And it made me feel like I didn't want to pour that much into somebody until my sister-in-law sent me that poem, right, Cheryl? That whole, and I realized every moment that it doesn't matter that I see the gift, that I see the fruit. It matters that I do what I do such that the fruit bears, right? Sometime. Yeah.
I'm lucky because reading this book happened to coincide with one of those 0 birthdays for me. And I've been getting, with the COVID and everything, I think we've gotten more used to meeting online and so on. And I've had more phone calls this time. Even yesterday, which is a week after my birthday, I got a call from a guy in Sarasota, Florida, and he reminded me of meeting me at Good Shepherd in 1973. And he told me that I did things for him that I never remembered. He said, I just loved your calm. He said, we were all so young and we had these big jobs. The church was 400 people. Anita Bryant was beating her drums against us. And we had to do things. We had responsibilities. And he said, Cynthia, you always remain calm through it all. I would never have told you that Vaughn would say that about me. So you're right. We cast it out there, and it's just wonderful that sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, and Cynthia, you ran a travel agency for how many years? Think of, once again, when I'm fighting now, but here's Jane Ann, it's only cookies. You only let folks go on vacation, but think of what the stress relief, think of the relationships, think of the friendships, think of the laughter, right? Because you tied people to a site. And so there's no only, that's the tough thing we do, is we say, well, it's only, there's no only, you know, if we could X that word out, maybe, and elevate what it is that we do.
Yes, that's a very good point, because this time Darlene and I always had these lavish parties, see, for the 0 birthdays. And so having lost her 7 years ago, there was going to be no lavish party. And so I said to one of my good friends, I said, if I can't do a special thing for myself, after 40 years of being a travel agent, I don't know. And so I went up to Leland, Michigan. I went over to some Sutton Bay. I went to places in Michigan that I haven't been in years, and with a good friend. But I got away from the idea that being in my house where all the parties were usually held, and so I had a lovely, lovely time.
Oh,
But you're right.
That's
You
good.
just have to change it up, and I did that for many people. And a woman called me and said, "You guys used to do the great party. I'm turning 80 in 2 months." And I said, "Robin, who do you want to be with?" She said, "Well, my niece is lesbian in Florida, and I didn't get to go to her wedding." I said, "Well, then go give your party in Florida." "Oh, what a good idea," she said.
That's cool.
Well, and
absolutely.
Cynthia, your story also is very reminiscent of how Elizabeth pulled herself out of depression,
Yes.
Mhm.
right? Which I thought was a really good part of the book, an honest
Mm.
part of the book, that all that attacking the Life magazine story, it did get to her.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and she was able to, but she was able to pull herself out of it.
Yeah.
Very similar to what you were talking about.
Yeah.
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 Well, happy big birthday.
Well, thank you. My other book club had a little party, which was also fun.
Aw, well, we
yeah.
didn't know.
What
No,
day was it?
That's okay. It was fun. But I'm just saying that it was nice that my my other book club did. We
Yeah.
got together, and I saw some pictures, let's put it this way, of years ago that I hadn't seen in a long time. So
How cool is that?
pictures are cool too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's life is different. I'm dealing, my sister has severe dementia, and I'm in charge of her as her guardian. So I still have responsibilities. And Steve Peters said to me one time recently, he said, before he passed away, he said, "Well, what are you up to these? You always ask me about myself. What are you up to?" I said, "Well, the church just called and said that we have to renew the bank cards. I've got to get over to the bank." I said, "I didn't even know that I was on the bank cards." I said, "But it's nice to be relevant." And his answer was so warming. He said, "Why am I not surprised that you're still relevant, Cynthia?"
That's a nice compliment.
Wasn't that sweet? Steve
Yeah.
was a jewel.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
That's-
it was a gem.
Um, I do not bake for a living, I will say that. But it's always been something I love to do. But just recently, I received a letter from a client that I had when she was 15 years old. And she's just over 40 now. And she, I guess, was talking to her current therapist, and said, so I guess she was explaining her story, how she'd gone into therapy at 15. Her parents didn't know, and she was getting money from her older brother to pay for it. And that's when I was sort of in the beginnings of my career at Christian Counseling Services. Anyway, all that to say, her therapist said, "I think that person is still practicing. I think you should look her up." And so I got this letter in the mail from her, and I'll post it maybe at some point, but she attributes me saving her life and has named her company after me.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Company
That's
is
awesome.
Murray, is my last name, Murray, and then her name, because she said I was more of a mom to her and she wanted to sort of honor me, but I had no clue, like, this is all happening. I didn't know.
Wow.
So I'm on her company letterhead, and she just said, my therapist told me to find you. And so I'm so happy I did. So you don't know what's down, you like, it is downriver, however many years, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I was really moved. I have
That's
it.
a
I
great
have the letter
story.
framed.
That is a great
But-
story. That's
And
awesome.
you really don't know of all the thousands of people, Joe, you would have ministered to, or
Yes.
Cynthia, you would have ministered. You have no real idea what goes on in their lives subsequent to your little piece of their story, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of the Elizabeth's power, is that in a way she was disconnected from the empowerment that she did have. I mean, she was doing it to survive in a way, and yet it was so engulfing to so many people, and it's engulfed so many people. So I think that's part of the power of it.
Yeah.
Well, and she lives again through the popularity of this book, right? The message of the character. I mean, when you
Mhm.
keep asking that question, Cheryl, I'm like the same way. What is it? There are so many great books, but this
Hey,
book,
what-
like Christy, like you said, everyone has said, I read this book, you know, and it even looks like the show might be a good, you know, might be good as well. But it's interesting that the message is getting further and wider, you know,
Yeah.
from that TV show, right?
Mhm.
And it's interesting, Janie, and I ministered in a relatively small church, a couple hundred people in Colorado Springs. And when I left there, I don't know if you remember this, Cheryl, but probably one of the most moving moments in my life was when the minister there, as I was leaving, said, if Joe has touched your life, please stand. And just to watch people stand up, you know, and there was no story behind it. There was no how, there was no, and I think it's, you know, that would be like the coolest entrance to heaven for all of us. If all the people that you touched positively in your life were like lining that road, you know, it's like, man, it's like the 18th green, you know, you're walking up the 18th green to the final shot. But yeah,
Wow.
yeah, what a powerful book and a powerful message.
Well,
And a
let's end it with
conversation.
one last question.
Oh, okay.
Is there anyone you would not recommend read this book?
Oh no.
We usually say, who would you recommend it to?
Well, I think there's some people that would be terribly offended by the way the Catholic Church is portrayed.
Hmm.
And if they can't look past that, my friends that can't, and I know who they are, I just would have them not read the book, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
I know a lot of men who wouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, that's true.
I do remember the series that Andrew Greeley, he was one of 7 or 8 priests.
Mhm.
They all graduated from Northwestern. I had one of them as a professor in human sexuality at St. Jerome's in Waterloo. But Andrew Greeley was in Chicago and wrote a series of books. It was his own therapy about the Catholic Church. And I mean, he was ostracized, he was criticized, but it was all true. It was all based on Cardinal Cody, and I mean, it was exposing the church, and it was his therapy to keep himself alive. So yeah, there'd be a lot of people that would go, oh, here we go again. It's another one of those. But
Mhm.
that said, it's true. So
Do y'all know of men who have been reading this book?
I just gave it to my neighbor. He gave it back to me today so I could have it when I was for tonight. But he had read Educated, and I said, well, if you liked Educated, you're gonna love this.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Well, and I think, what's the guy's name who was the producer of the TV show? Was it Walter?
Walter.
Yes, Walter Pine.
So Walter says, you know, all guys aren't like this,
Right.
but so many of us know guys like this and did nothing.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that's a super important message, you know, the allyship needed
Mm-hmm.
from, you know, from all of us to avoid injustice
Mhm.
is, I think she, you know, the message is there. I think it maybe could have been a little. I kind of wish there'd been a little bit more of that,
Hmm.
of
Guys, you need to-
allyship.
yeah, kind of guys you need to participate too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, we are over our time.
Shocking.
an incredible conversation, you guys. It's been awesome. Loved it. I love when we share little bits of our lives and our stories, and that's so cool to me to hear that. And some of our thoughts and perspectives. We have our next book, The Other Einstein by Marie Benedict. She's the one that wrote the Personal Librarian, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. And remember that this one is going to be on Monday instead of Tuesday, October 30th, right before Halloween. And I talked with Barb today, and she said, in addition to the emails that I send, that if you have given her your phone number, you've sent that in or whatever, and said she could text you, she will text you to remind you too.
Good.
On the Monday, because it is a special day, especially. Okay. So so if you haven't given that to her, if you put it in the chat, she will text you just to make sure you get a reminder. And I'll remind you over the weekend and stuff too. So
You always text me.
yeah. Who texts you?
Barb texts me so quite often.
Oh, there you go. Good.
I mean, just that we're gonna have the meeting,
Yeah, good.
Thank you for the quote, Jovi, in the chat. I do remember Maya Angelou's. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Changed my life, changed my ability to give away and not need to see any
Mhm.
result.
The result, yes.
Really changed my life. It really did. In ministry, period. I think in everything, but in ministry, because people can just walk away and yeah.
It's part of that whole trust and allow, right?
Yes. And when you're developing somebody and you're pouring them in for a purpose, it's just an interesting transition from my start as a professional in the military, where nobody could leave, like no matter how bad it got, right? And then corporate, where we had different structures, and then, volunteerism in a faith-based community. It's a whole, the way you lead and manage becomes the way you influence. It becomes the way you lift up. It's a whole different, it's just a journey.
Yes.
But at a very low point, when I was preparing someone for leadership, that showed up for my sister-in-law, and it allowed me to keep going. I mean, it allowed me to keep going. So, yeah. Enjoy, my friends. Monday. And we're doing that because we're not gonna impact those who enjoy Halloween, right? Yeah. And the children's. Okay.
It's Monster Month in my town.